Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson and I'm an attorney with the Lohman Abdul Law Firm here in Hudson, Wisconsin. And I mentioned my day job because today we're interviewing the candidates for district attorney, and particularly we're going to start with the Republican candidate, Donna Berger. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Can I call you Donna?
Yes, you may.
All right. So Donna, I usually start these candidate interviews with just tell us a little bit about your personal background, where you were raised, where you went to school, and your family, if you would.
Sure. My name is Donna Berger. I was born and raised here in Hudson, Wisconsin. I went to Hudson High School, graduated 1992. My parents are Pat and Cyril Cernahouse. Grew up just south of town in Croix Township. And in fact, I currently still live there, not with my parents.
Okay.
After high school, I went to UW River Falls and I received a 4-year degree in sociology, criminal justice. I minored in Spanish. While there, I also completed my junior year in Mexico. So I used to be fluent in Spanish, but I don't use it much anymore. From there, I decided to go to the University of Minnesota, where I received a master's in sociology. After that, I went to William Mitchell, and where I received my law degree.
Okay. So you got your law degree in 2002, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So Hudson resident and native, and then graduated from schools in this area, River Falls, U of M, and then William Mitchell.
Correct.
Now, are you married?
Yes, I am. I married Dan in 2004. We have 2 children together, Jake and Victoria, ages 9 and 11. They attend Rivercrest here in town. I also have 4 adult stepdaughters who live around. They have, between the 4 of them, they have 2 children. So I have 2 step-grandchildren, ages 3.5 and about 6 months now.
Okay, great. And now your current occupation, or your occupation that's been for a while, is public defender, is that correct?
Correct.
But you're not currently in that position because of the rules that once you file papers to run for office or declare running, then you cannot be practicing as the public defender, is that right?
Correct, mostly. I've been a public defender for over 13 years, and then once I filed the papers, the agency said because it's a partisan position, I have to take a leave of absence.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Well, how do you feel about this being a partisan position? Because I've never understood why district attorney, register of deeds, and some of these clerk offices that you have to declare a party and run partisanly. What's your feeling on that?
Well, that's actually a great question. I have no idea why it's a partisan position or why it's considered a partisan position. In speaking with people about the campaign, people have asked me that question, and I can't answer it. The way I see it is the DA is the head prosecutor in the county, and you are there to enforce the laws that are already created. So legislatures, they're the ones that create the laws, and a lot of times people want to know if you're more conservative or more liberal. But as a DA, you don't necessarily get to choose. I mean, you have discretion, of course, but it's the rule of law. You enforce the laws that someone else has created. And so I'm not sure why they want to know whether you're more conservative or liberal.
Well, that's the thing, is adopting a party, and first of all, running on a party doesn't necessarily mean you agree with everything in that party's platform. But given that the system requires you to pick one, why the Republican Party? And not the Democrat, I guess. We've got 1 Democratic candidate and 3 Republican. Other than the fact that this tends to be a Republican county, so that's kind of a good idea, just practicality-wise.
Right, practically speaking, yes. Over the years, I have found that I tend to lean more conservative, especially fiscally. I don't, I believe in helping people, but I believe in helping them by giving them opportunities, providing them opportunities. The old saying, you can give somebody, fish, but you teach them how to fish, and they
Right.
can provide for themselves. So, like I said, I find myself tending to lean more conservative than I do liberally, and I've noticed over the years that I've tended to vote
Okay.
more Republican than I have Democrat.
Sure. So, all right. Well, this is basically you're vying for what constitutes a day job because, like all practicing attorneys, I mean, you're there to, whether it's represent a plaintiff in an injury case or represent an estate in a probate. As a prosecutor, job is to represent the public's interest in enforcing the laws. So, how do you see your 13 years plus as a public defender as experience that will assist you in being a prosecutor for this county?
Actually, I see that as one of the best training grounds to prepare for being a prosecutor. For 13 years now, I have been talking to defendants. I've been talking to their families. I've been talking to the mental health professionals, the AODA professionals. So I think it's been a great training ground. I have seen and talked to the people that the criminal justice system, either, however you want to look at it, whether you want to help them, whether you want to punish them, whatever you think the job of the criminal justice system is, I've sat and talked to these people. They've told me, why they do the things they do, what has helped them in the past, what doesn't help. So I think that all of that experience is going to help me in a way that somebody who's only prosecuted their entire life, they don't have that insight. They hear something in the courtroom occasionally, perhaps they'll hear the lawyer's argument, but they don't have, we'll call it behind the scenes like I've had. I go into the jails, I talk to these people, the families want to talk to me. Victims have requested to talk to me because sometimes they don't see it the same way as the prosecutors, and so they've given me more background information. Also, when you get a case, whether you're the prosecutor or the criminal defense attorney, you take the case and you apply the facts to the case. You look at the law and you apply the facts. So, maybe I'll be coming at it from a different angle than I'm used to, but it's still the same process.
One major difference being, certainly in the end, it's a jury or sometimes a judge that decides guilt or innocence, and you're just presenting facts that would support your client. And you would do that as a prosecutor as well. But the extra duty of the prosecutor would be deciding which cases get prosecuted in the first place. Because as a public defender, you don't represent people until they've been basically charged. Is that?
That's basically correct, yes.
So what would be your philosophy in bringing charges? Because that's been a big item in the current events between the Attorney General and the FBI director talking about whether or not to bring charges against Hillary Clinton in the email scandal. And then you have various places where these police shootings are happening and prosecutors needing to make decisions. It just happened here in Hennepin County not too long ago with the prosecutor deciding whether or not the police would be prosecuted. So what's your philosophy, just taking the politics part of that side out of it, but in evaluating a case and you see what laws are potentially at issue here and what violations, would you bring charges as long as the police officer wants to bring charges and they've met that probable cause burden? Obviously the burden of proof in front of a jury is beyond a reasonable doubt. And there's no such thing as a case that's absolute 100% chance of conviction, but where would you draw the line as far as the likelihood of being able to bring, or your standard for bringing the charge and the likelihood of a conviction? Is it 50-50, 60-40?
Well, I think in bringing a case, you have to remember that you are affecting people's lives. And so I would need to, if all I'm being given is probable cause, then I would want to sit down with that police officer and ask, why are you bringing this to me? You know, to find out what's behind it. If all you've got is probable cause, then most likely, no, we're not going to charge that case out. There's no reason to be using time and resources and money on a case that, you know, is going to could possibly get thrown out at the next hearing.
So if it's more likely than not to result in acquittal, you wouldn't bring the charge then?
Most likely not. Again, I would want to sit down with that police officer and ask, why are you bringing it to me at this point? Perhaps he or she may think that they're going to get something again soon, or they're letting me know that they're building a case. Not necessarily that they want it charged out at that point either, or perhaps there's, you know, if they think it's some type of a ring. But I would definitely want to sit down first and find out why this is being presented to me at this point.
Well, I mean, having 13 years of defending people who have been charged, okay, so a similar question to whether to discharge the case is the level of charge. And we've heard the term overcharging. And there are some prosecution offices that get a reputation, we're not going to name names, but they have a reputation for overcharging, charging a case maybe with an upper level felony, knowing that then once the person gets in the system, maybe gets assigned an attorney, that then there'll be bargaining going on and then they'll get it reduced to something lower. Have you seen that in your practice?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And we should say that your primary county is not St. Croix County as far as defending. You've been in other counties, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yes.
I've only handled a couple cases here in St. Croix County.
All right, so we're not casting aspersions on current administration or anything like that.
Oh, no.
But so how would you combat that tendency or temptation, if you will, to overcharge a case in order to get a resolution that you want in the first place?
Well, you sit down and you apply the facts to the law and you charge out what you think you can prove. I would, since I have not been on the prosecutorial side, my goal would be to sit down, of course, with the people who are in the office, and to see what their standard is, how they go through the process. And then I know many prosecutors, and so I would also be talking to them about how they have done their process. But again, what I think people forget sometimes is that the defendants and their families and even the victims are also involved too. And when you overcharge a case, that can have some very serious effects on lives, especially when you have, I'm assuming you're familiar with CCAP.
Yes. Which is the Circuit Court Access Program for our folks at home, all right?
Yes, it's a public access program. And when people look on there, they don't always understand how to read that, what they're seeing. And so when you've got landlords and employers on that website, and all they see is that somebody was charged with a substantial battery.
Right, which is a felony.
A felony. So the victim ended up with either needing stitches or they ended up with a broken bone, something of that nature. They don't always see that the original charge may be based on faulty information. You have to get medical reports back to say whether a bone was actually broken or not. And I have actually had a case where they thought that the bone was broken and it wasn't. And so, of course, then the prosecutor did knock it back down to just a misdemeanor battery, but that doesn't always show up on public information. And so you need to be careful when you are charging things, because mistakes can happen.
And speaking of CCAP, you see some cases where they'll have the CF designation, means it's a criminal felony file, but yet then under the disposition, sometimes ordinance, it's knocked all the way down to something that's not even criminal. And is that done too often, or can you make any generality statements from that?
Well, since I'm not involved in all cases, I can't answer whether it happens too often or not enough, but I know I have represented people where they went from felonies down to ordinances. And again, it was based on the facts of the case, or perhaps it was part of a negotiated bundle. So we were talking about more than just that case. And there was a reason that we had that knocked down. Again, the one case that I can think of in particular, that was really kind of at the urging of the victim. And so the prosecutor took what the victim wanted into account when we fashioned that particular resolution.
And let's talk about that. That's another unique difference with defender versus prosecution is the the victim. Sometimes you're put in a position as a public defender to often be adversarial towards the victim. You have to cross-examine them hard, again, on the facts, and the facts have to speak for themselves. But do you, you tend to be, are you anti-victim or pro-victim, and you have an obligation as a prosecutor to obviously protect victims' rights and so forth. So how do you see that coming into play, and is there any difference between you and the other candidates in that regard?
Oh, I would hope not. I mean, victims didn't choose to be victims. They're involved in the criminal justice system because they got pulled in somehow. And so as a defense attorney, I have also taken them into account. When something horrible has happened to somebody, you don't need to constantly make that person rehash it or have to live it again over and over and over again. Particularly as a prosecutor, you want to be careful of that, and you want to try to protect that victim as much as you can in the criminal justice system, or as they have to go through the justice system. As a defense attorney, my primary objective, of course, was to represent my client, but I didn't try to do it to the additional detriment to the victim. I had to deal with adults and children. And like I said, I actually had quite a few victims want to come and talk to me for various reasons. And so as a prosecutor, obviously I will be talking to more victims than I have as a defense attorney. But like I said, they didn't choose to be in the system.
Well, one thing that the public needs to understand is you have a balancing act even as a defender, and your duty is not always to just get an acquittal in every case, because sometimes it's just a matter of maybe the facts don't fit the charge that was charged, but maybe it's more appropriate for a conviction at a different level or to a different crime, and then you can also fashion the conditions of the probation. That's not going to be any different. In this case, it's not something new to you. You've done that in the past.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's not going to be any different at all, trying to come up with what you think is an appropriate resolution, whether it is long-term incarceration, whether you think that it would be safe to put the person on probation, and if so, what are the appropriate conditions of probation. One thing that they have been finding in through, the new, well, not so new anymore, but the evidence-based practices, that everybody is trying to engage in now, because they're more, you want to do what works, rather than spinning your wheels all the time or reinventing the wheel or whatever.
Well, it's got to be frustrating to see sometimes the same defendant back again.
Oh,
just
always.
as frustrating as it is for the prosecutor to have to charge that same person over again. And so I would think that there's some common ground there in trying to prevent this from happening again. So getting a condition, for instance, treatment. I mean, where it's warranted, get it there early in cases where it would work. What other kind of unique solutions to crime would you pose if you were to be elected to this position?
Well, the treatment courts have been becoming more and more popular because they are showing good results. And so I would certainly want to continue any of, I'd continue working with those. I mean, those again are a county-wide, it's not,
Right.
the DA's office isn't going to create that. That's a partnership between many stakeholders in the system.
But there is a commitment of resources, certainly, for that.
Certainly, yes. And there also are I believe St. Croix County also has diversion program. There's a youth program. Since I have not worked in St. Croix County, I am not completely familiar with every program that is out there. And obviously that is something that I will need to and want to research more and become involved in, or make sure that the office has been involved. I definitely want to work with the youth in the county. I think the younger that you can get to them, the better chance you have to keep them out of the system and finding out exactly what they need to keep them out of the system. Also, you have all of the cycles. Cycle of poverty, cycle of you represent, I've represented parents and kids,
Right.
and so you want to make sure that the children are getting what they need. I know there's a juvenile court.
Well, that's where maybe your background sociology comes into play, right?
It certainly helps.
And along the lines of sociology, maybe more psychology, but that is mental health, and that's becoming a more prevalent issue in criminal justice as well, because, if it's not drug and alcohol addiction, it's usually a mental health issue is what's causing that person to be in the system.
Many of my clients have either drug and alcohol and or mental health.
Yeah, sometimes they overlap,
issues.
right.
Yes.
So how would you address that part of it? Is the jail cell appropriate place for somebody who has a treatable mental health condition?
Most of the time, no. And that's something that the mental health system needs to work, or we need to work with the mental health system, especially, it starts with the police officers, because they're on the front lines. They're the ones that first usually, there's a crisis line that they can call to help them decide, do I bring this person to a hospital or do I bring this person to jail? Some of the fact is, some people who are supposed to be taking prescription medications don't take them, and so that's another thing that you kind of need to figure out is, if this person just starts taking their medications again, are they going to be law abiding? Or is it that this person absolutely refuses to take their medications? And so those are questions, though, that usually are going to be better handled by the mental health professionals. So it's, how do we get that person there? And again, too, the problem with just always throwing them in jail is they're probably not going to get their medications in jail, which means they're not going to improve. Insurance becomes an issue. Also, again, if they need to be in some type of a facility, if they end up with criminal convictions or certain criminal convictions, that sometimes can affect the mental health system's ability to help them or to place them if they need to be in some type of a facility. And so I know that is something that we've, or that I've always tried to watch for, because I don't want to make it even harder to continue this person, or being able to help them so that they can stay on the right track. And also their families. A lot of it falls back on the families if there's no insurance, or they can't get that person placed.
I guess we should back up a little bit. Having had all this experience in, developing proficiency in what you're doing as a public defender, why switch to the other side? Why go into prosecution? Why are you considering doing this?
Well,
not considering, you're running for it. So.
Yes, I am running for it. I have always been interested in criminal law. No offense, but I've never been interested in civil law. And so when I first was going through law school, again, I tended to always, it depended on the case or what was being presented. I would look at the case and I would decide whether, I think the person should be prosecuted or the person should be defended. But originally I always thought I would be a prosecutor. But then when I went out, I got a job with the Public Defender's Office, and I've really enjoyed it. But now this opportunity has presented itself with Mr. Johnson deciding to retire. And so, like I said, I don't think it's as big a leap as other people think it is. Like I said, when you get the case, you apply the facts to the law and you decide whether the person should be prosecuted or not. And if you think the person should be prosecuted, what do you think the appropriate outcome is going to be? So again, I'm sure people won't agree with me on that, but I don't think it's as big a leap as other people do.
And you feel ready to take on the non-prosecutor aspects to the job, which is the administration and handling of the personnel. It's a lot of employees in that office.
Yes, there are, and I do know some of them. There are some that I'm sure I've never even met, but most jobs that I have held some supervisory position. Obviously, it's not near what the DA position will be, but I do believe that I am ready. I'm hardworking. I am able to make tough decisions. I don't ask people to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. I can communicate. There's going to be a learning curve, but I'm ready to handle that. I've always stepped up to the plate and have been able to accomplish anything that I've tried doing.
Excellent. Well, our time is up, and so I'll have to end there, but thank you. I think you hit on all the areas that we were looking for to tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself. But if they do want to learn more, is there a place that they can go? Is there a Facebook page? Or
I have both a Facebook page and a website. It's Burger for District Attorney.
And burger spelled just like the food. It's B-U-R-G-E-R.
Yes, B-U-R-G-E-R.
Okay.
And then it's the number 4 in the website. So burger4districtattorney.com, and the Facebook page is Burger for District Attorney, and the word 4 is spelled out in that one.
Okay, so it's spelled out on the Facebook, but it's just the number for the website.
Correct.
All right, we got that. Well, thank you very much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you for watching another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal.